the gift of the Creator of our ancestors, who have already paved the way, solved all the problems that we need to solve. All we have to do is call on them, call their names, invite them to join us. They'll be here. They will be with us. They will bless our efforts. We will never fail. But if we fail to remember them and call their name, invoke their presence, nothing that we do will go correct. Ashe.
But of course, if you've been living a Ma'atian life in this life, and you've been telling the Ma'karu, as our ancestors would say, telling the truth to our brothers and sisters, then you know you have no problems. You know you'll have a spiritual space in that next life. I know when we walk and some people say, well, I don't want to come to that event because they're going to talk about all that black stuff. We're talking about the black stuff that was for the dawn of time. We're talking about the black stuff that came from the fallopian tube of the Nile Valley. Without that first black stuff, meaning first black man and woman, we wouldn't even have humanity on the planet Earth. Right into the Kemetic science, we're going to deal with the Kemetic science and deal with it step by step. What was the effect when they came into Africa? We want to deal with that. And then we want to go deep into Kemet to show brothers and sisters that this spiritual concept existed for thousands of years. And then you put it in your own Ma'atian court of law. And then you judge it for yourself. I'm not here for you to believe what I say. I did not come for that. So this will be information, brothers and sisters, that documented from the ancient papyruses, from the reliefs, because the information to some of us, we may find hard to believe. But of course, like I said before, believing is seeing. So once you see the truth, as though our ancestors knew that one day we would forget our story. So they wrote endlessly on the monuments and temples. We have to deal with those early Christian fathers. Where were they from? They were from North Africa, Tertullian, St. Augustine, and Cyprian. These were the Africans who brought many of the concepts to the Latin church. You can see that from what our ancestors have told us, that we mentioned their names, there were 27 popes and 7 bishops in Africa before there was one in Europe. But with the persecution of North African Christians before Europe was even a Christian nation. Let's deal with St. Maurice, who also was persecuted, as Dr. J.A. Rogers told us, because he refused to murder North African Christians. Maurice is the name that means Moor in Latin. It's an African named Cyprian that Diocletian persecution around 300 AD persecuted because he was studying the African Gnostic system. What was the African Gnostic system and why was he persecuted? Because the Gnostics knew that this spiritual story of the Christ went back thousands of years. They were the ones who were keeping the spiritual story alive. They were known as the knowers of the truth. What truth? They knew that the concept of the Trinity, the concept of the resurrection, the concept of the Holy Birth was an ancient story that goes back to their ancestors for countless thousands of years. Long before the European version of it, our ancestors had this. That's why they had to go around killing many of the early Gnostics, because they knew the foundation of the truth, but as long as the Gnostics were alive, they couldn't bring on this European version of Christianity. Christianity, that started in Egypt, went south to Ethiopia before it went north up into Europe. When many of the persecutions were taking place in Egypt, where did the people run to? They ran to Ethiopia. They carried the sacred writings and the sacred texts, or still right there in Ethiopia. They had to conquer one place, and that place was Kemet. Why Kemet? Because Kemet had the ancient spiritual stories that the Gnostics were practicing, that means the knowers of the truth. Many African priests were kidnapped from Kemet to even teach many of the Romans a lot of this spiritual story. It's Constantine, who came into Kemet, came into great temples like this one right here, Ipit Rasut, known as Luxor today, and all the way in the back, I don't know how well you can see it, but here you see that they plastered themselves over the ancient metal nectar of Amenhotep III, trying to this time cover up the ancient legacy of African people. Trying at this time, try to make it look like as they were the builders of all of this. As you see some of their Roman faces right here on the side. Can you see that very well? As we look deeper into this, why would Constantine put an altar down into Ipit Rasut? As is documented in even one of their Torah books, as it says, Luxor Temple stands a Roman altar bearing a Latin dedication to Emperor Constantine around 324 to 327 AD.
The term black. You know, earlier I stated that you can trace the word black in Greek to noir, N-O-I-R, which is the French interpretation of the word. You also have the Roman interpretation of the word, which was Nero. You also have the original Greek interpretation of the word, which was necro. From the word necro, you get the Spanish interpretation of the word, which is negro. Or in the feminine version, negra. When the Spaniards came over here, it was enslaved people left and right, they called them negro as an insult, right? Which is black. They call them black from the Greek word necro, which means dead or black like dead, black. You know, black is death, right? Because when the European bodies would die, what color would they turn? They would turn black. So in that science, you got to understand that when you're saying black, right? Because it was the slave masters who gave you that term. Black means death. Nigger, which comes from the word negro, which is the English interpretation of the Spanish word negro, means death. Every time you called you a nigger, every time that man, the Satan, called us a nigger or anybody else a nigger, he's saying you're dead. You're necro. You're Nero. You're noir. Huh? You're negro. You're negra. You're dead. You're black. Like death.
Manufactured Negroes will be coming out of white folks' society. I mean, white folks manufacture Negroes. If they got a problem with a black one, we should have a problem with a white one. There's no way we can study our story with the enemy as the deity in the spiritual subconscious of our mind. In order for us to reach our people, we've got to clean house. Yes, this is going to bring emotion out of you. If you're truly about trying to liberate our people, it's going to be that kind of experience. All it's been about was to control and make sure that they brought their image as God and create spiritual enslavement to take over the world. This is the whole objective of that image. How can you be free deifying the same people that enslaved you, that murdered you, and still oppressing us today? We need to deify our own African sisters and start to deify our own babies. Let's look at this. You need to find out, say, what's going on up in there? Yeah. What y'all doing up in here?
Hey, what's up?
What's going on here?